Laura, our Light Path Collective human design guru, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. What an intro. I'll take that.
I know that you guys in the past have been really curious about human design whenever we talk about it. So I love ending our podcast series this year as we edge towards the end of 2023 with this really practical and I think life-changing approach to human design, because it was just through our conversations that we were having, off camera, off social media, where the impact that human design can have on our relationship to others. So as many of you know, Laura has a background in corporate, and you're really focused on human behavior and how to do that in the most effective way according to your human design. So it's only natural that the most vital relationship that we have in terms of leading other people and nurturing other people is that parenting relationship. So of course, why wouldn't we consider the human design lens in terms of the way we relate to our kids?
Yeah, 100%. And the premise of, human design is that it allows you to work with your child, other people, in a way that's really unique to them, and supporting the fact that they've come here pre-wired. We've all come here pre-wired, and what human design does is exposes that. And it's a reminder to you of what you came here with. And that's coming here with strengths, areas that you're going to learn from, things that you're here to communicate, all the way through to like the way in which you might feel about making decisions. And it's the same for children. There are younger versions of us effectively. And so learning how to nurture that, cultivate really well-defined, clear, supportive relationships. Human design can really expose areas that are different for you and the child, and how you can uniquely come together and provide that really kind of sacred space for them to learn and grow and be nurtured in.
Yeah, as they are, not as who we want to maybe contort them or condition them to be. So before we dive in, let's kick off as we always do. What is your current favorite quote?
My favorite quote at the moment, I had to think about this one. I have recently been playing around with the quote, "You repeat what you do not repair." The reason being is that what human design opened up for me was areas of conditioning that I have become accustomed to because I wasn't fully aware of really who I was and what I was here to do, my purpose, all the way through to the natural gifts and talents that I have. And I was in various different cycles. I was repeating things that I hadn't repaired or accepted. And that's just something that's really stuck with me all the way through my journey with human design. And it's one that I've spoken about a bit through posts and social media and talks that I do, because I think it's innately true for anybody in any situation, whether it's relationship, whether it's situationships, whether it's corporate environments, changing jobs, anything that's really getting you stuck in a repeated experience. I truly believe that if we focus on the repair of that, then we can ultimately kind of eradicate the repeat of it.
And it's sometimes it feels so insurmountable to do that. And it's so much that I constantly repeat in my life, because even my mum said the other day, I'm totally dobbing her in, but she realized something about herself and she said, "Oh, but I'm not changing it now. Like, I'm in my 70s." And it's like, yeah, fair enough, mum. Like,
And that's okay. Like, that's okay, because you can, if you've accepted it that you're going to be in this cycle, then each to their own. But if you're looking to break a cycle, or the cycle makes you unhappy, or it causes you to lose yourself a little bit, then it's really about a choice of what we would consider like healthy repeats, or repeats that if they're ultimately making you unhappy, like what's causing you to consistently repeat that. And so it opens up the core of the issue rather than the problem itself. Like, what's causing you to have this quote unquote problem in your life, and it really dives into like the crux of it, rather than just the surface level of, "Oh, I'm not doing that again." It's like, what is the reason I may be repeating this?
Yeah, love that. And we're here today, yes, to have this experience of how human design can really impact your parenting. But even if you're not a parent, like human design still massively impacts me. Before we hit record on this podcast episode, I was saying to Laura, oh, like I'm a bit worried about this, and she's just like, well, in your design, blah, blah, blah. And it's so reassuring to be like, okay, no, I am on the right track. It doesn't feel right, or I'm a bit nervous about it, but I am on the right track. That really is honoring who I am. And so if you don't have kids, this episode is just not for you, because you could like pull out kids and replace best friend, spouse, co-worker, neighbor, whatever, and work with that. Like, I'm dying to know what my niece and nephew's human design is, because they are such different kids, yet I treat them as I am, not necessarily a lot of the time as they are. So yeah, don't think that this episode is just for parents, but I also want to use this opportunity to announce something really exciting on behalf of Laura, in that she has taken the leap to follow her gifts and her passion, and has now stepped out from her corporate role and is full-time in her own sovereignty and calling and purpose in life, and is now launched as full-time in her human design business. So congratulations. It's a huge
step. Yeah, a huge step. Yeah, it feels like a huge step, but it feels like the right one. And I've definitely leaned into my design in making this decision. It's been a long time coming. And I'm really glad that I've personally had coaches along the way, yourself included, where it really enables me to kind of speak out about what I want to do and really get myself in alignment to that. And props to human design. You'll get sick of me saying it, but it really enabled me to go deep and understand what my natural talents were, and actually be really cool with it. And whether it's a little bit different, whether it's something that I was maybe a bit scared of before, but this work now feels really aligned to what I was doing. And even throughout my corporate experience recently, doing coaching through human design and supporting individuals in a corporate situation with human design has really enabled me to see just how great the impact of this modality is. And I'm definitely here to spread the word of how it's changed my life, use examples of how I've seen it and felt it change other people's lives. And so I feel really called to do this work, and it feels very empowering to be able to do it. I'm sure there will be many ups and downs that come with running your own business, but for now I'm on a high, so I'm going to ride it as long as I can.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure that you're following her. And the good news for us on the Light Path Collective is now so much more appointment times will be open, because Laura isn't rushing off to her full-time corporate job. So it'll be much easier to get in and more convenient to really connect with Laura and all the work that she does. So let's dive in. I mean, neither of us are parenting experts. We use our gifts to really hold that mirror up and reflect back to the people that we're working with, what we can see. So just remind us, first up, what human design actually is. But if you want to go deeper on that, we have done episodes on this in the past, and I'll refer to them in the show notes. But what human design shows us.
Yeah, and so human design ultimately gives you a blueprint of who you are and all that you came here with. It brings together 5 different ancient wisdoms, all into one place that you can really disseminate everything about yourself. And it's an ongoing learning practice. It's not just you have one reading and that's all you need to know. It's an ongoing learning process, because throughout one reading, there will be things that resonate and there will be things that won't resonate in an instance. And so it's an ongoing journey. I'm still learning a heck of a lot about my design through the experiences that I have. But what it does do is it helps you connect the dots as to maybe why you feel a certain way or how you've reacted in a certain way. And it teaches us that we're all made up of different energy types, and that there's no kind of like one size fits all. And it really enables us to understand how we move in this life, and also how other people move in this life, and how we can come together. It also can alert us to potential triggers or area of development that we're here to learn and experience. But as I said, it's not one size fits all, in a way that what we say today will resonate with everybody. What I always say is, when I'm doing a reading, is take what resonates with you now, because you're picking up what you need to know, and trust that everything that you're hearing, if it does resonate, is exactly positioned for you to hear it. But this is where the journey of kind of living with and practicing human design can really come into play, because it's what resonates now will continue to resonate, but what doesn't resonate now may resonate in the future.
For sure. And that's definitely also been my experience of working with you. So given your background of working with others, and I think it's such a beautiful testament and example of what happens when we lean into or expand into and trust our path, that things open up that you never expected. And I know that you were a bit like, what? Why are people all of a sudden asking me about their children's human design? I'm in no way kind of linked to that type of work. And I think that's the beauty of trusting the path, in that it's opened up and you realized, oh my gosh, there is a huge aspect here that I can help and hold people with. So talk to us about what impact knowing your child's human design can have on your parenting.
Yeah. And yeah, just to make a point, like, I'm not a parent. However, I have been a child, and I have parents, and so I've experienced it from a different side. But I was getting a lot of questions from current clients and new clients reaching out, that they were really curious to understand their child's human design in order to support them. And I use the term support loosely, because what support means for one might not mean for the other. But the premise that, we're gifted with children, we're gifted with life that is pre-wired, but they don't come with a manual. They don't come with a guidebook that says they may need more time to make decisions, or they may be particularly headstrong, or they may have a gift for selling in the future. They may have a gift for creating communities. And so they don't come with a guidebook. And so often I've had comments that some of my friends who have 1, 2, 3 children, they feel like they're just winging it. And to an extent, absolutely. Aren't we all? Like, aren't we all just winging life as best as we can?
Every aspect of life. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what human design can do is give you more understanding and more of a blueprint about your child, but also about yourself. And how both your energies work in this sacred bond. And as parents, we try and be as nurturing and supportive, but we only know what we know about ourselves. And often we can try and use And so without a manual, it's hard to kind of know what they need and what they're looking for from you as a parent or a guardian. And so, as I said, human design can really give you more of a manual, so that you can support the child in their unique way, support them in their confidence around their gifts, support them in alignment to what they're going to choose for themselves in future. And it's not to kind of change the path that they wish they want to take or they're going to take, but it is really to be that support service around them, to ask really great questions, to get them feeling in a way that's unique to them. And I think as children grow up, particularly in this day and age with technology, the access to social media, the pressures of social media, the pressures of making certain decisions about yourself, a lot of questioning about who we are as humans from an adult perspective, let alone what that must feel like from a child's perspective, to be able to have some tips and tricks on how to get them to really understand how they feel so that they can express that in their true form, I think is something that we can all benefit from, not just as parents, but just as humans and adults moving around in this life. So it allows you to understand ultimately who they are and who they came here to be and how to interact with them. And also, if they have siblings, how to work with each of them differently. So yeah,
I think
it's
that's
eye-opening.
I think it's just so empowering, because to me, what I'm hearing is, by knowing this, I'm no longer reacting to them. I'm responding to them in a
Yeah.
way that they feel safe, understood,
Mm-hmm.
accepted, and seen, but also in a way that makes me really effective with the decisions that I'm making, or the conversations that I'm having with them, whoever them is. And honoring their individualism in a way that doesn't separate them from the clan, but rather invites them to be exactly who they are, so that they can contribute. And I think that that's that whole vibration of that, Aquarius age that we're all in now. Like, who are we individually, and how is that honored? What a dynamic gift that you can give to your children, or the children around you, or the people around you, to provide that safe environment at home to then send them out into the world. I just think that is like, it's vital now.
Yeah, and even more so now, because there are a lot of social constraints, there are a lot of social expectations, and to be confident enough within yourself to know what you align to, how you're making decisions, how you know what is meant for you. That all being said, again, to go back to my quote, like, we all make mistakes and we all trial and error and things like that, but it gives them a really good setup and a grounding to be able to trust themselves.
That is huge. And even as an adult, that is what your guidance through human design has given to me. Like, oh, I am this way, and that's okay. Trust that. Like I said, even before we got on, I wasn't freaking out over something, but I was expressing like my concern over something that I was doing. And you're like, yeah, but remember, you're supposed to do that, and this is why you're supposed to do that. And I was like, oh, okay. I was just focusing on this tiny little different angle of it, forgetting that if I just focus on that angle of it, everything will take care of itself. And that ability to trust your intuition, or yourself, or your own processes, oh gosh, like, I can't imagine what I would have been like if I'd been given that gift. Not that my parents did anything wrong, but as my mum always says, you know better, you just do better. And responding to my child, or the children in my life, as opposed to reacting to them based on who I am and my experiences, completely changes that parenting game. And I can imagine it must feel so good to parent.
Yeah, and I've done a handful of parent-child readings where we've spoken about frustrations. Usually I sit with the parent, and if there's even multiple frustrations in terms of like, maybe they aren't reacting in a way that's similar to how their parents would react to a situation. So, with an easy one is deadlines at school. Maybe there's a clash between energy types of when stuff is going to get done, and that can be linked to things like open centers, where we feel pressure to maybe get things done sooner than they need to be done, versus more defined centers where we're comfortable to wait for that adrenaline kick in order to get something done. So I always liken it, an easy example is were you a kid that did the homework 10 weeks in advance, or were you the kid that did it at 11:59 the night before and still got it in on time? The results are the same, that it's still, the homework is still done, but it's a different way of doing it. And if the parent is somebody who is going to be wanting things done early to get it sorted and tick that off my list, versus the child who's going to be like, yeah, no, 11:59 is when it will be done the night before, and I'm good with that, then that can cause some friction, right? Because the parent is going to be like, you're not prepared, you're not ready, when actually their natural gift is to react when the adrenaline kicks in. And so there's other examples of that I have around, like, some children are more energetic than others. Some are wanting to explore through different environments. Some are really sensitive to different environments. And that can be linked to their energy type. And so managing a child through change, whether it's they're going from one level of school into another, or you move house, or just something changes, they can be particularly sensitive to it. And there's ways in which you can nurture that and ask really great questions to support them in that journey. And so there's, as I've mentioned before on a previous podcast that we did a while back, there's 5 different energy types. And so all of them kind of move and meander through differently. And so at least understanding that, and how that energy works. Someone might be seen as lazy because they don't necessarily have a full tank of gas every day. There are some energy types that don't have that. They have half a tank, so they have to be very mindful of where they place their energy, versus others who have a full tank of gas every day. They're running around, they're exploring through, picking things up, finding out whether they like it, putting it down, moving on. And they can be seen as kind of like scattered or unable to necessarily focus, but they're just exploring through what lights them up, versus kind of diving in on something that they feel that they're really intrigued by. So there's also the links with like reactions of what causes a child to maybe become frustrated, what causes a child to like know when they're aligned. Is it that sense of satisfaction when a job is well done, or is it satisfaction through like exploring something new?
I'd love to hear more examples of how in practicality, if, I was a parent that was coming to you going, okay, who on earth is this thing that is in my house? Who is this child? Like, even experiences like that you've had in retrospect of your childhood. I'm so tempted to ask how I should have been parented so I can parent myself that way, because now it's my job to parent myself. It's not, that my parents did a great job and they did a brilliant job with what they know, but it's just so interesting to see like, oh, wow, yeah, if I'd been told that changed everything, I need to start telling myself that. So yeah, what are some other examples of how this practically can work if I was to come to you for this type of session?
Yeah, and so I've got a couple of examples from my own experience. And, again, I had a wonderful parenting experience. My parents did their absolute best. But I can see now how I'm very different from my sibling, my sister. And so an example that I can give of an early memory is when I was younger, I was all of a sudden into music, and I was obsessed with the flute, and I really wanted to play the flute. And at the time they were expensive, and all I kept going on about for about a week was the flute that I really wanted to play, and I wanted to learn it. And so bless my parents, they said, if we're going to buy you a flute, but you've got to go to the lessons. And I was like, yep, that's what I want to do. I want to play the flute. And
such an uncool instrument, by the way. Were you some kind of special nerd? Like, no shade to all the flute players out there, but like,
I have no idea what my obsession was with it. The only thing that I can think of was because it looked elegant, maybe. I mean, I wasn't a particularly elegant child, so maybe I was trying to be someone I wasn't. But I, bless their hearts, they got me a flute, and I played that thing for about a week and I was over it. I was bored of it. I didn't want to play the flute anymore. My mum was not impressed with me because at the time, I mean, they are expensive instruments, but any wind instrument is really expensive. And so I was forced to go to lessons that I hated because I had kicked and screamed that I wanted this flute. And then I went on to the next thing. I think I then wanted to try and play the guitar, but that didn't last very long. But if I look back, I've
just always... FYI, if I was your parent, I would have dragged you to those lessons and like really punished you to try and teach you a lesson. Like, don't be uncool would be my lesson, but I would have done it.
Yeah. And so once we got over that, I think what I wish that, if I say wish, what would have been helpful for them to have known. So I'm a manifesting generator, and as a manifesting generator, we change our minds a lot. We change our minds a lot because we're basically exploring what really lights us up and what gives us a really good vibe to want to go and explore. When we are lit up by something, it could lead us to something completely different, but it's that instant kind of interest that we're looking for. And so it's shown up in my life in multiple areas. I've I've worked in human resources for a really long time, but I have changed jobs multiple times to explore different industries. I have had multiple different hobbies. I was really into sports. I was really into horse riding. Even within those hobbies, I guess, I would change discipline all the time. So it was like I would do something, get good at it, get good at it, move on, take what I learned from it, move on. And so there was also comments from friends about me being a bit scattered, not able to kind of stick at one thing. And knowing what I know now about my energy type and what I'm here to actually do, which is creation and like bring things to life. So I have the wonderful gift of like the initiation and the creation of a manifester, but I also have the generator energy to actually move things into form. And so for me to pivot very quickly, take what I need from something and move on is actually very natural for me to do. I also liken it to I've never finished a book ever. I will get to the second to last page and I am very comfortable putting it down. I will read one chapter, put it down, never go back to it. I've got this one book, and Josie, I have not finished that last 3 pages that I said I would about 6 years ago. I don't know if they managed to save the eggs or not, and I never will. And that to me is very frustrating for other people.
I can't. If I had given birth to you, I don't think we would have survived your childhood. Oh my gosh, I'm getting anxious just sitting here listening to that. Can you put, oh my God. I don't even know this book, but I want to read the last 3 pages just to tell you, because it bothers me that you don't know. It really bothers me.
So, but for me, that's not, I'm very comfortable moving on and taking what I can and move on from it. And that's very typical of a manifesting generator, because we will pick up things exceptionally quickly, take what we need, move on to the next thing. And once you know that about somebody, and you'll probably see that now through the Light Path Collective with us, is that I will build and build and build. I'm constantly like iterating, creating. And so that can be frustrating for other energy types who don't know that about me, when we're working together, because I'll be creative, on to the next thing, but I might not go into the depth of the detail. And so there are children that I've seen that are really fixated on and wanting to really explore one thing really, really deeply, get really good at it, and not necessarily move on until they've completed. But often what can sometimes happen is that they can get stuck there because it's like a never-ending completion. And so support in really understanding, like, are you still enjoying this?
Yeah.
Is this really something that does light you up, or do you feel like you have to do it because you committed to it? So understanding.
I'm dying to know for myself and everyone else that's listening that's having a nervous breakdown. You can answer either of these questions, but I hope it's the second one. So what would have been the best approach for your parent in the flute scenario? Or 2, how the hell do I manage you? Because because I don't want to fall out with you, but oh my gosh, I can potentially see how I will one day just chop your head off. No, just kidding. I won't.
No, and I think because I know this about myself, I'm very aware of how it comes across. So 2-fold questions. I'll answer the second one first. How I manage it knowing this is that I often won't, I will say that the idea is not fully formed.
Yeah, right.
I will say that I'm not finished with this and I'm still exploring, but here's the first draft.
So that's why so when we discuss things now, you do actually do that. You say, I've got this idea, but I'm not quite sure yet. And me, I'm just like, just crack on. Like, it's fine. And so I just have to be like, okay, and trust, because I do trust, I trust you, but also I do trust perfect order, that at the right time, at the perfect time, you'll come back to me and it will be fully formed in a way that you feel confident and competent with.
Yeah. And so I often don't commit to something until I've gone through a journey of, now to answer your second question, when a manifesting generator is lit up by something, it's usually a gut response. but that's not always their decision-making tool. So I'm what's called an emotional manifesting generator. So my gut will light up, but what I have to do is actually sit with it for a bit and see if I'm still interested in that 2 or 3 days later, or sleep on it. Usually what I say to manifesting generators is sleep on it, see how you feel tomorrow. Because the initial gut reaction of like, oh, yes, we have gas in the tank for that, it might actually be something that you don't want to do. And I usually give this kind of example. If your friend asks you if you want to go out on so it's Monday, your friend asks you if you want to go out on Friday. On Monday, you might be like, oh my God, it's been a hell of a day. Yeah, I'm going to be so pumped for a drink on Friday night. You get to Friday and you're like flat. And you're like, I actually really don't want to go. And so what you've done is you've not allowed yourself to ride your emotional wave that week, to be like, I actually don't know how I'm going to feel on Friday. Can I get back to you on Thursday? I'll know a bit more by then. Because you're giving yourself time to think through something. Now, that's just one example of what we call an authority when it comes to decision making. And so each energy type will have a different authority. So as children, you might have somebody who makes a decision very quickly. And they might rely on their gut reaction, and that's just their telltale sign of what they want to do. So things like yes, no questions. Do you want ice cream or not? Do you want to go to the park today? Do you want to try soccer? So you're asking those yes, no questions to get that gut response. Now, if you have an emotional manifesting generator, say, you might say, so what my parents could have done in that moment is, okay, so you want to play the flute? Have a think about it, have a look at like what you need to do to learn how to play the flute, how you need to look after it. We'll see if you still want to play the flute in a couple of weeks' time. And as the beauty of children is that there's a naivety, so you can say, okay, not right now, but we'll think about it. Promise we'll think about it. Go off and do some research about it. And so you can hold off the decision that needs to be made for as long as you want. So if they had said to me, okay, let's go and have one lesson first. Let's go and have one lesson and see how you feel about it. Because it was very quick after one lesson that I was like, oh, no, thank you. Can't do this very well. I'm not elegant at all. Don't like it. And so either trying it in a way that's, the cheapest option, but also like saying, okay, you want to do that? Let's have some time to think on it.
How cool would that have been as a child to know that you had the freedom to be inspired by and desire what you desire, knowing full well it wasn't going to be a burden on anybody by having the taster or just having the time to lose interest in it?
Yeah. And there's so out of the 5 energy types, there's one in particular that can be really sensitive to the surroundings. So it's often one that's not spoken about as much because it is the rarest of the energy types, and it's called a reflector. Now, the uniqueness about a reflector is it's approximately about 1% of the population. So if you know a reflector, like, it's a really, really beautiful energy to be around, but they're what we call fully open. So they are fully open to different energies around them, and they are such a beautiful mirror to what's going on. So they are literally the mirrors to, if we say a family, they are the mirrors to a family. And so when I've worked with reflected children, or parents of reflected children, the child can become like very agitated in certain environments if they just don't feel right there. And so for them to stay in an environment that they feel really icky in can be really impactful on them, rather than kind of asking them like, how do you feel, what's coming up for you? Because in its most like blatant form, if they're in an environment and all of a sudden they feel on edge, they're picking up on something from the energy around them because they're so open to absorbing the energy of others. So they might be like, okay, I'm good in this space, but like they might be more comfortable maybe positioning so they can see out into the space, rather than like they're back to the people, so to speak. They might want to naturally sit in the corner so that they have like security behind them, but they can see what's going on and see out there. And so usually, like, if they're a bit off, then it's for good reason. But for sometimes it can be, frustrating as parents. You've gone to this lovely place and now all of a sudden they feel a bit icky about it, but asking them what's uncomfortable here. They're also really interesting when it comes to like interacting with others. They often have like a sensitivity to other children, so it can kind of cause them to retract a little bit and not necessarily speak out about how they're feeling. And then it comes up in other ways around like maybe not wanting to do certain things in front of people, like they might not want to play soccer in front of people because they might all of a sudden feel not very good at it. And so it's like there's a lot of influence from the outside world for them to process every day. And so for them to have a bit of alone time in the evening and not always do after school clubs, if you can help it, and actually give them that time to just be in a safe space, and that might be their home, might be their bedroom, might be just like sat with you on the couch, but you provide a safe space for them to like fully decompress, to get back to themselves. Because if they're constantly in this state of feeling other people's energy, then it's hard as a child to really disseminate what's yours and what's not.
I think it's really interesting when you reflect on that childhood journey, like when they're so little, they're really, it's so vital because they're such putty in your hands. And then when they enter that kind of teenage phase, they're just taking everything that they learned from that and try to make it work for them in situations that feel good but also feel really challenging. And so how empowering that you can provide these experiences for them, because you know innately who they are, and then they have the strategies that they can choose to adopt or not. And if you kind of reflect just more in a broader sense on those teenage and early adult years, how many of us did do things based on society, peer pressure, expectations that had nothing to do with how we really want to behave? And I was driving home yesterday, I was thinking about how I'm just a person that's never really loved nightlife. Like I just don't like, to me, going out to 3 a.m. sounds like an absolute waste of time. Like it's just not my vibe. But how often as a young adult did I try to do that because it's what everyone else was doing and all of that kind of stuff. And I don't know, lucky I'm just stubborn and I never kind of did it and never kind of went along with things. Like my first living out of home experience was living on the other side of the world, and I was in this flat and there were 5 of us, and every single other one of them were huge clubbers. So they'd be out clubbing all weekend, doing stuff that I just wasn't interested in. So to this day, I've never been to a rave. I've never been to a club. I've never taken a drug because it just wasn't my vibe. And I don't know if it was my conditioning or I'm just really stubborn. I just didn't do it. But how often I see people do stuff that are totally not aligned with them and come out of that. I think it's just such a really awesome opportunity we have with ourselves, but also working with our kids to give them permission to be themselves through this.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, like there's all hindsight. I truly love hindsight. Like hindsight is always 2020. And a lot of phrases when we say, oh yeah, well, like hindsight's great, sarcastically, it really is, because it enables you to see just that, right? Like you can see how your design comes into play when you were actually of the mindset. And having a defined mind can often mean that you're quite strong with your, not necessarily opinions, it's like strong with your perception. So it's like there's not much influence there. And if you went on a night out as a young adult, you would already know, like, okay, like if I'm going to go out tonight, then I need at least 3 days to just do nothing, because that's how long it takes me. Whereas other people that don't know that about themselves, it's like they can get frustrated of like, God, I feel so terrible, I went into that not knowing. And so again, it's human design is a learning tool about who we are, how we are, why we are, and ultimately, like we're all going to face a certain level of conditioning, right? Like we're all going to face it. We have to experience conditioning in order to undo it. So again, that repeat what we do not repair. You have to experience it in order to repair it if necessary. And sometimes conditioning is good, sometimes conditioning isn't so good. but it's just a part of this life experience. And so if you're hearing about human design for the first time and now you're suddenly thinking like, oh my gosh, have I done something wrong? Absolutely not. Like, you haven't. This is being spoken about. You're hearing this as a support function rather than any kind of like right and wrong. Because often when we start to dive into patterns and behaviors, naturally we can overthink certain things. And so, if there are any kind of triggers for people, then there is a lot of like professional help out there. But human design is just one tool that can help map or understand certain behaviors between you and your child, or you and other humans in general. And I firmly believe that if you're ready to do like deep inner work and knowing these patterns can really help you understand where these behaviors come from, rather than it being a shock, or rather than it being any negative thing. It's ultimately a modality of self-exploration.
Yeah, I love that. So how, if this has piqued someone's interest in themselves or in the way that they parent, obviously we know how to contact you via the Light Path Collective. You can find Laura there. And this new aspect of your work in terms of this appointment that you can have just focusing on your children, it is up, it is live today. So you can book in and explore this with other people. Any last final thoughts that you would want us to know?
I think I would just say if anybody's curious about it and they have questions before they would want to meet, then feel free to reach out through the collective. It's Laura at the Life Path Collective. You can follow me on Instagram or TikTok. It's available there too. But I think it's something that is a conscious choice to want to dive in and understand either yourself or your relationships with more context. And so if you have any questions before you make that commitment, then just reach out. This is a modality that I have personally considered life-changing. And I know, and I'm going to say that with conviction, I know this can help everybody in any situation, whether it's parenthood, work relationships, work specifically, or any kind of relationships. And so if you just want a bit more information or have any questions before you make the commitment to yourself, then I'm all ears. Just reach out.
Love that. And we'll pop in the show notes. So look down there on the other episodes that Laura has done. I'll refer to them so you can go back exactly if you want to dive in more and listen more. But as always, congratulations. Firstly, sleep and being in service to many in this way. I think that is just so beautiful, and I'm so proud of you having watched this grow over so many years. And feel very fortunate you have decided to share this on the Light Path Collective. And thank you for your time today and sharing this gift with us.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to speaking to anybody who wants to talk about human design. I can geek out about it for hours.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.